Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at some of the top stories that made headlines around the globe. Well, it was suspenseful, wasn't it? After 133 cardinals of the Roman Catholic Church from 70 countries this past Thursday elected a new pope to replace the late Pope Francis, and he is 69-year-old American Cardinal Robert Prevost from Chicago. The new pontiff emerged after 2 days of the most diversified papal conclave in the history of the Church to lead the estimated 1.4 billion members of the Catholic Church worldwide. The new leader of the world's Catholics is the first American pontiff in history, and he has chosen the title of Pope Leo XIV. He is reputed to have global experience, spending much of his career as a missionary in South America. He worked for many years as a missionary in Peru before being made an archbishop there, and most recently led a powerful Vatican office for the appointment of bishops. He is also seen as a reformer who is expected to build on the reforms of his predecessor, Pope Francis.
Fratelli, sorelle carissimi.
This is the first greetings of the resurrected Christ, the Good Shepherd who has given up his life for God. And I should also like this greeting of peace to enter our hearts and our families. Let us keep in our ears the weak voice of Pope Francis that blesses Rome. The Pope who blessed Rome, gave his blessing to the entire world that morning of Easter. Allow me to follow up on that blessing. God loves us. God loves everyone. Evil will not prevail. I should also like to thank all my cardinal brethren who have chosen me to be the successor of Peter and to walk with you as a united church. Always seeking peace and justice. Seeking to work with men and women who are faithful to Jesus Christ without fear to proclaim the gospel, to be missionaries.
That was such a beautiful mass, his first at the Sistine Chapel, which he held. And in his, I would say, inaugural address, he did say a lot of things, just basically spreading a message of hope, talking about the fact that the world we live in is very dark, as opposed to a lot of people who are Christians. He says there's also something called practical atheism. And I see from his inaugural address that he is going to address some pertinent issues. He highlighted secularism, so basically mixing the world with the church. And I think that's something that definitely toes in line in the legacy of his predecessor, that is, of course, Pope Francis.
Absolutely. I mean, his first address, or shall we say,
Sermon?
Sermon.
Sermon. I think sermon is a better word.
Like you said, it was deep,
Yes,
and interesting,
deep.
But I was going to start with the fact that it was a quick one, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Barely 48 hours within the conclave, and then he moved from being a cardinal, then to Pope Leo, the 14th, But like you said, interesting days it will be, given the fact that a lot of people are expecting that he will continue in the fashion, that his predecessor, started with. I'm not always sure, or shall I say comfortable, when a section of the media tends to highlight the part of reforms that they expect either a pope or the leader of any church to carry out. And when you say that, bring the church to the world. I'm not so sure what that means, but again...
No, okay, well...
my point, therefore, is that the 1.4 billion Catholics in the world, what are their positions on some key issues, key scriptural issues? If a pope or any religious leader wants to take a position on issues affecting the world, that's very much welcome. Mm-hmm. It's just about the weight of his words, that may, sway opinions and contribute to international discourse. But then what is expected to represent as far as his church, as the leader of the Catholics worldwide, is concerned, it's very well, very well stated. And we can't go outside of that book that empowers him to lead.
Which is the Bible.
Absolutely. We can't go outside of it or try to change some aspect of it in order to suit certain narrative that people tend to push, which has always been my own position, which I also believe that it possibly will be the position of most of the Catholics and most of the Christians who just say, fine, it is okay to be progressive, it is okay to have a worldview, global view on a few issues, but what makes you a Christian, what makes you a Catholic, what makes you who you are, and particularly what makes you the Pope, the things that you need to do to lead the people, your shepherd, are very clear. And they are well stated in the Bible. And no amount of, sugarcoating it, no amount of pressure, no amount of trying to say, be a reformist like another person. Because what reform could possibly be bigger than the fact that this is how a pope will be. And we know who a pope is, what he is, and what he will always represent. And I see, of course, that the new pope, is also very clear in many of the issues that tend to be contentious, in global discourse. And I just hope that with the prayers of the people that is leading, and the support.
I also found it interesting that he's American, the first American.
First American, which
That's
is
a pretty big deal, especially in light of the existing, I will call them ideological differences as it pertains to religion in America. You have people who have different opinions on what religion is. Like you rightly said, it's all boils down to the Bible. So I really look forward to seeing how he will address pertinent issues that if I do say so myself, oftentimes stem from America and then influences the rest of the world.
It is the God's home country, isn't it?
It is. That's what I'm saying. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he will, address some of these issues. But I think that's besides the point. I think for the 1.4 billion Catholics across the globe, this inspires hope, and this just, of course, champions their belief even more to say that, we're going to keep the faith and we're just going to keep it moving. So that's exciting to see.
It will be, and it will be exciting to see how he also engages further with the government of the day. It won't be his job, clearly, but of course, that the voice of the Pope will be an important contribution to discourses, given the fact that America is considered to be the leader of the free world, and then you have a president, who's a nonconformist when it comes to certain issues.
Oh, absolutely a nonconformist.
All right. Well, back home here, the governor of Anambra State, Chukwuma Soludo, on Thursday said his political party, All Progressives Grand Alliance, will adopt President Bola Tinubu for another term in office. The governor said the president's political party, the All Progressives Grand Congress, share the same progressive ideology with ABGA, which then makes it logical for him to support Tinubu to achieve his vision for the country. President Tinubu paid back the compliment by stating his administration's resolve to continue to support Soludo to actualize his vision of making Anambra a peaceful, secure, livable, and prosperous homeland for all Nigerians, irrespective of tribe, ethnic, and religious affiliations.
In the meantime, former president of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, has warned of the dangers of Nigeria being allowed to slide into a one-party state. The former president spoke in Abuja on Wednesday while paying a tribute to the late elder statesman Edwin Clark at a memorial lecture and day of tribute. Clark, an Ijaw leader and politician, died in February at the age of 97. Dr. Jonathan warned that any attempt to bring about a one-party state through political machinations to soothe only personal aspirations would be detrimental to the country. Now, Steve, of course, this is your terrain. You know this a lot more than I do. And I need you to help me make this make sense, right?
Go on.
Number one, do we not learn from our past experiences, not just as a country, but as history? We look at places like Zimbabwe in 2008, getting into as much as, I think it was in the 6 trillion of the numbers in percentage for inflation. Okay, let's take a look at what other country would I say? North Korea, for instance. The dictatorial rule that we've seen as a result of the similar situation. We look at places like Ethiopia, like Cuba. when you're talking about global powers, does Nigeria not want to be mentioned on that conversation? Okay, so we take it away from the implications of having a one-party state to the people. In all of this, we've seen different people, different political leaders speak. Where are the people? Is it not the votes that boil down to the people? What are the people saying? Are they consulting with the people? These decisions, I have no issues with the endorsement, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with people, political leaders coming out to say we endorse. And an endorsement is fine. But I'm saying, on what basis is this endorsement coming? Is it coming off the back of the people who are electing these leaders to go into the office? Or is it coming off the back of personal interest? And you know, you'd always say that, Steve, we cannot stop talking. But it looks like the more we talk about this, the more endorsements we see. It's like an emphasis on C.
Yeah.
All these people are saying for your own. You know, I don't get
Kachi,
it.
let's take it, one by one.
Okay, please, let's do it.
To start with, I'm not sure how Zimbabwe comes into this
No,
equation.
Zimbabwe did with ZANU-PF. At some point in time, they definitely had like a one-party state system.
Okay, and then North Korea, one party. Oh, that's where you were driving
North Korea,
at.
it was like, it was the families I was talking about, the dictatorial with the families, which, is still in...
one-party dictatorship. I'm not sure if that defines what is happening in Nigeria.
Similar.
And I don't think so.
Okay, can I just give it context since you
on.
gave it reference? Okay,
Yeah.
so if you have a one-party system, that means you have one party that is ruling a space. What then happens is there's no opposition. So there is no backing. There's nobody to say we refuse or we do not agree. Everything comes under one system, and you have a system where everybody begins to conform. This also influences instrumental systems that build a nation, like the courts.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm trying to say? So that's what I mean by a dictatorial system, where people are not allowed to express themselves anymore because they all have to conform.
That's fine. What you have described, it is Rwanda, in Africa that comes to my mind. It is possibly Cameroon, a few other countries, not to mention those ones who have been taken over by the junta. But to come back to Nigeria, to start with, I don't think that we're a one-party state. I don't think that we're in any way heading to a one-party state. Because constitutionally, there are 18 registered parties.
But that's not the point,
in Nigeria.
Steve.
It is part of the point.
No, we're not talking about the number of parties. We're talking about whether or not everyone is heading towards one direction.
But not everyone is heading in one direction.
Not everyone is heading?
No,
well,
not
you're
everyone.
The same person who were talking the other day on the show, and you said, we might just have 3 or 4 or even 2 opposition, governors at the end of the day by the time defections are done. So how can you say everyone is not moving?
I said that last week just to give you a background that what those who are complaining about are saying now is not new. And which is my point about what former President Jonathan said that we have referenced, that we read out, that don't. What I pick from what he has said is that don't go through the back door, don't use subterfuge, don't use, coercion to try to lead us to a one-party state. But then if he was trying to suggest that we might be headed to one-party state, then what we need to do would be to remind him of when PDP was a behemoth. And everything that they seem to be accusing APC of today, they did, and APC is not even there where PDP was. I'll give you a few instances.
It's like you don't like to forgive somebody.
No, it's not about forgiveness.
I have a feeling that if I do something bad to you, you will not forgive me. You tell me, Kachi, that was how you did this thing.
But the points are important, and what I'm trying to say was that there was a time in this country that PDP had controlled 28 states.
That was what you said last
of the federation. At a point, temporarily, PDP controlled 31 states, temporarily. When President Goodluck Jonathan left in 2015, PDP was controlling 22 states. Just one more that APC is controlling now at 23. And then you still have Abia with Labour Party. You have Soludo, Apga, in Anambra. Even when he says, I endorse President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for a second term, Apga has always done that. In Kano, we have NMPP, and there are still about 10 or thereabouts of PDP governors. And I did say last week that it is possible that we might end up with 2 or 3 more, maybe 4 governors leaving the PDP. For me, it is more about the fact that PDP is imploding. It's not so much about the fact that APP is gravitating towards a one-party state. If a sitting governor with no apparent threat to his seat suddenly says, I'm leaving my party to go to another party, let us talk about why that governor is leaving and not why APC is embracing the person. To talk about Anambra State, endorsing Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it is not new. This is what APGA does. In 2011, at the elections, when President Goodluck Jonathan was going to run for his first, shall we say, substantive election, when he took over from the late Yaradua, and there was an election in 2011, APGA endorsed him. As a PDP president, APGA endorsed him. In 2015, for his when he wanted to run again, even though he lost to Buhari, APGA again endorsed him. Fast forward to 2019, when Willie Obiano was the governor in Anambra State, he unilaterally endorsed Muhammadu Buhari for a second time, in 2019. Buhari won against Atiku Abubakar, even though there was a faction of APGA that said, oh, you don't have the authority to do that, blah, 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 blah. What was the point? Did he have to do with the fact that Buhari was APC and not like Jonathan, who was PDP, twice that APGA endorsed him? Now fast forward to 2025. Governor Soludo, who by the way worked with Obasanjo as the governor of Central Bank, at that time, is now endorsing the only man standing in the South at the time that PDP dominated the entire, southern part of the country, with only Lagos State left, with the ACN at that time. So for me, it is not new. Will it translate to anything substantial? This is where the movement that came up in 2023, becomes a reference point. In all the states where Peter Obi won, there were governors of other parties there, but he won in those states, including Lagos State, which is the home base of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So when we are suggesting that, we might lead to a one-party state, blah, 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 does that reflect how the people will vote?
That's exactly what I was asking.
I doubt. Okay. But even at that, until APC gets 29, possibly 32 states, I will now say, it looks like APC has broken the record of the PDP. But don't let PDP people who are now moving en masse, to APC come and say, they are taking over as one-party state. You did it before too. If Asiwaju had left his party to join you at that time, will he be in the position that he is today to say that we stood for position politics? Let Governor of Delta, let Governor of Uyo, who seems to be coming to APC, let them ask themselves those questions so that when it comes to the brass tacks, people will ask, the media will ask, when everybody was gravitating towards one party, was there anybody who stood and said, no, we will stay until we get power on our own terms, which was what, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did from AD to AC to ACN to APC today. Now, he never wavered. He never changed.
Now, what he was saying at the end of the day, he was warning about the dangers. He's not saying that, this is our reality. He's warning about the dangers based off of what is happening. And I don't think it's just about what's happening in Anambra. I think it's a generic situation. I get that point.
And I think that is an important point to make.
It's an important point to make.
The same way that the state point was made when he was the president.
That's what I'm saying.
And he controlled 22 states of the federation.
I absolutely agree
we have
with
to
that.
Move on.
But I still think it's important to note that at the end of the day, that what he's saying is absolutely valid, irrespective of what has happened in the past. We cannot keep making reference to what happened before to justify what is happening today.
No,
that will
because
keep us
the past is important.
No, the past
Don't let us forget
it. But the result of the past is what we need to learn from. If we cannot learn from that, then we're just going to be stagnant.
The result of the past is that after a while, the wave will subside.
And then Nigerians will be in the same position as they were in the last decade.
I don't know about the same position. I'm talking about political parties and the possibility of a one-party state. Of a one-party state. That's my concern here.
So one-party state versus the people. It looks like that's what we're heading into 2027.
We're not heading into one-party state. It will not happen. I know that for a fact. All right, we move on. The Senate has passed 2 out of the 4 controversial tax reform bills forwarded to it by President Bola Tinubu last October, setting up a single autonomous body responsible for all federal tax revenue collection. It also expunged the clauses that allow states to establish state revenue tax board, even as it approved that 2% of the total revenue collected by the Nigerian Revenue Service. Our Rice correspondent, Omo Bazwaye, tells us more.
After a lengthy closed-door session, the Senate reconvened to consider the report of its Committee on Finance as presented by the chairman, Senator Sani Musa. According to Musa, the tax bills are designed to help streamline Nigeria's tax laws and propel economic prosperity.
These bills seek to streamline tax administration, reduce leakages, and promote transparency. Key reforms include digitalization of tax system, rationalization of multiple taxation, and the introduction of incentives to boost investment.
But while the report presented by the committee was brought based on all 4 tax bills, the Senate, in its clause-by-clause consideration, focused mainly on 2 aspects: the Nigerian Revenue Service Bill that seeks to establish a single autonomous body for all federal revenues collection, including the value-added tax. The Senate also passed the bill that deals with the administration of taxes in Nigeria, leaving the Senate with 2 other tax bills for consideration at its next legislative day. On the proposed Nigerian Revenue Service, Senate expunged clauses 87 to 98, which allows states to establish their own internal revenue service.
I have a very serious concern, particularly when you go deeper into the provisions of this particular bill at clauses 87 downwards, where it is clearly intended that we make laws for states and local governments. This is against the Constitution. We don't have powers to make laws for states and local governments.
The Senate also expunged Clause 147, which deals with any tax laws that conflict with the Constitution of the country. The Senate also approved that 2% of the total revenue collected by the Nigerian Revenue Service shall be approved by the National Assembly.
The same item A, mine is on the percentage. 1% is the most acceptable and implementable or implemented. 2% instead of...
A major controversial aspect of the tax reform bills has, however, been the value-added tax and the sharing formula. While the Senate is yet to hit the gavel on the VAT rate and what should be the sharing formula, the Senate committee report retains a 7.5% VAT rate. The Senate committee also leaves 55% of the value-added tax, more than half of it in the hands of the state governments, including the Federal Capital Territory, while 10% is left to the federal government and 35% to the local governments.
A bill for an act to repeal the Federal Inland Revenue Services Establishment Act number 13 of 2007 and enact the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Act to establish the Nigeria Revenue Service charged with powers of assessment, collection of, and accounting for revenue accruing to the government of the Federation and for related matters 2025, third reading taken.
More than 21 extant laws, including the Petroleum Industry Act, were amended for the tax reform bills, which were the only item listed on the order paper for the day's proceedings. Omo Bazwaye, Arise News.
All right. I mean, very quickly, I think that was an important period on the floor of the Senate. 2 of the 4 bills, put forward by the federal government, have sailed through, which means that we no longer have Federal Inland FIRS Revenue Service. They've now transformed into Federal
Revenue Service.
Revenue Service or something.
Nigeria Revenue Service.
Nigeria Revenue Service. But of course, what we are being told is that it's not just about the name change. It's about rebranding, and it's about doing, things differently. More money, hopefully, for the federal government and for Nigerians, but this is how the government, particularly the president, wants it, and he has, he has had his way at least for 2 out of the 4 bills, which are very important.
Yeah.
I like the way that, the way in which the engagement on the floor of the Senate went. This is the sort of, near robust discourse that we should be getting from our lawmakers, not just rubber stamping things. And I think this also speaks to the fact that when it comes to the brass tacks, and when the issues are germane, our lawmakers can actually rise to the occasion, and defend the interest of their constituencies, which is what we have seen now in the other bill, which of course they were quite clear that you can't raise a VAT at this point. VAT still stands at 7.5, and they have left the sharing formula for now at 55% for the states, which in my opinion means more money, for the states in terms of the sharing, allocation and everything. 35% for the local government and just 10 for the federal government. The 2 other bills will be discussed at a later date, and you know how many of the governors have been waxing lyrical about how will this affect us? Are you taking money from Lagos and River States and giving to other states? Are you taking more money from us? A quality discourse, 2 out of 4 down, 2 more to go. I think that it is commendable, even though it is not, it is something that must be constantly engaged, particularly when it goes into, practice. Absolutely.
Well, I think we can take a look at the next story. In another development, Atiku Issa, the factional president of the National Association of Nigerian Students, who accused President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's son, Sheikh Tinubu, of kidnapping and torturing him over his refusal to accept 100 million naira bribe, this week released a statement on Facebook apologizing to Sheikh Tinubu. Now, Abubakar stated that he was misled by one Ladoja Olushola to believing that the president's son was responsible for orchestrating the attacks against him. He made the allegation on April 30th during a press conference in Abuja. The allegation of being attacked during a press conference in Abuja, saying that the Minister of Youth Development had offered him the 100 million naira bribe and that he was subsequently attacked and abducted. Now, I think it's very important to give this story some context. First of all, this apology was put out on Twitter. However,
it was also on Facebook.
It was on Twitter, it was on social media. However, I find it very telling that the members of NANS, for instance, the former Senate President, Comrade Henry, they've been speaking out as well. And they've been saying that they cannot find, or they have no access to the factional president, to Abubakar Issa. They have no, Abubakar Issa. They have no access to him. That this is somebody who apparently is currently being treated in a hospital that they cannot reach him in, a security hospital, where he was picked up from the hospital where he was being treated, taken there, and he has been denied release from this hospital. So how is somebody that is in a place where people cannot reach, his phones are not available to him, how is the person able to tweet? I've said it before, if Abubakar Issa does not come out by himself, makes a video with the members of his body to debunk
something believable.
Exactly, this statement. I don't think that statement is authentic. I don't think it is real. I think that statement was typed and sent. See if I could give you my phone right now. Tweet for me. It takes nothing to tweet. That statement doesn't hold water at all. As far as I'm concerned, there's still a lot of questions that remain unanswered. And it's so upsetting that these questions are not being asked. Number one, what happened at Wells Carlton Hotel? Witnesses have said there was a disturbance. What caused this disturbance? Secondly, the president's son, Sheikh Tinubu, has said enough is enough. This is defamation of my character. And then, what do you have to say to these allegations that have been levied against you? Third, and most importantly, where is the NANS president in all of this? For somebody that was so bold and made a video and was saying what he needed to say, put out pictures of himself being beat up. He puts out a tweet. Does it look like somebody that used to tweet? So first, I think that this story is very sad because it's a broader representation of what really goes on. We see issues happen and then they just disappear. It doesn't add up. I don't buy that.
I get your point, Cecily,
and
if things look fishy, it is important that we get to the root of it. I am also not sure why it is just only Sheyi that seems to be on the lips of everybody. I think
he was the one that accused him of
he also accused the youth minister. He also accused the youth minister. Of the same thing. He mentioned Sheyi in one breath and the youth minister. The youth minister is allegedly.
Yes.
The youth minister is an official. The youth minister does not work for Sheyi.
He said it was on behalf. That's what he said.
It's an allegation. So my point, and I'm not taking sides, or anything. I'm just saying the youth minister is an official of state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Sheyi Tinubu, the son of the president, is not.
Is not.
Both names were mentioned. Sheyi Tinubu has made some clarifications to say that this is concocted and this nonsense, must stop. We do not know whether he will go ahead and proceed to the court. But then let the minister also speak because he works for Nigeria. Sheyi does not. He works for himself. He's just the son of the president. But more importantly for me, I reiterate the fact that it is important to get to the root of this matter. The way that we saw that gentleman, factional leader of NANS, coming out boldly to say that, I was maltreated, they made series of allegations, is the same way that it will be important for Nigerians to see him. If he is recanting, or maybe his social media handles have been cloned. But then what sort of a student president is he to start with? I'm saying that when you say that you are the president of National Association of Nigerian Students, which school are you? Where are you studying? What course are you studying?
When NANS, that to the issue still?
It is important. It is important so that ultimately the idea of hijacking NANS for political purposes, either by those who are being elected as officials of NANS or those who might be in government or in corridors of politics, will find them important as a tool. Because if you are not a student in any Nigerian higher institution, ab initio you have failed to be a member of NANS.
I agree.
Then you should be a NANSU or something because you are totally out of school. So it is important to also address the larger picture of politicians in quotes who are out of school, who are probably doing their masters, have done their masters or doing their PhD or something, and then they come out and say that we're students and we're members of. Have you followed how the elections of NANS
there are definitely
take place?
Disputes there.
Do you know how much that go into it? When governors start showing interest in the leadership of a student association, then let us be wary of what is going on. That's my position. I don't have any personal problem with this gentleman. It is important for him to come out so that we know what's happening. But I'm also interested in when were you elected?
And I think those are questions that he also needs to answer.
In which school were you studying?
Yes, he needs to answer these questions. And the only way he can correctly answer these questions is if he is alive to answer the
Absolutely, that's very, first and foremost, that's the key question.
Yeah,
that's the key question. And that goes, of course, to the authorities and to the police, who should be interested.
Yes.
And then what about his ESCO? Shouldn't he have an ESCO? Who is his vice president? Who is the secretary general? And all those people. Yeah. They should come out more so that their voices can be heard. If indeed they are students and they are representing the interest of students. We move on. The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Thursday ruled over a dispute between the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission and MultiChoice Nigeria over the recent hike in subscription fees for pay TV services, declaring that only the president has the power to fix or suspend prices in Nigeria. The trial judge, Justice James Omotosho, ruled that the suit filed by MultiChoice Nigeria constituted an abuse of court process, as similar proceedings were already pending elsewhere, adding that the plaintiff should have pursued his arguments in that court, rendering the current filing procedurally inappropriate. Justice Omotosho noted that while FCCPC has investigative powers under its Establishing Act, it lacks the authority to fix or suspend prices unless specifically delegated by the president through a gazetted instrument, and held that such delegation was not presented to the court. I mean, Kachi, this, of course, will, come down to the issue of consumer protection.
Yes.
And I get the point of what the FCCPC is trying to do, given the landmark judgment previously that they got against Meta, and all those things, and how the court has sustained the fine, that was meted on them. But I think that this is a totally different ball game. They went to court. It has to do with the price increase in February, which came into effect on the 1st of March by MultiChoice. And FCCPC is saying that you do not have the authority to increase your price. But of course, Justice Omotosho is saying that only the president of Nigeria, no matter how well-intentioned you might be, only the president can do that. And you can't set prices, for people. I think that is an important thing for FCCPC to consider. If you couldn't intervene when subsidy was being removed and people are now jacking up prices of how much you and I buy fuel, if you couldn't stop Uber, or any of those taxis, taking people around from increasing their prices, or any consumer good whatsoever, I'm not so sure that if it is fair, as far as business is concerned, as far as foreign direct investment is concerned, to continue to appear as if you are trying to gag and dictate what MultiChoice is doing. I get the point that it doesn't look like that we have so much of, shall we say, options. But then there are options, and in any case, cable TV or satellite TV is not like buying bread, or it's not like buying fuel. You really don't have to watch it if you can afford it. If there are infractions, if the type of programming that are being dished out, run foul of the laws and values of the land, that may be a different angle for FCCPC to look at. But then to say that you can't charge, I mean, could you charge any of the telcos, for example? And there was a time that there was the argument that, you can't increase, and then they say that, well, everybody else, given the existing economic reality of the country, everybody else is increasing. How come it is ours? The vehicles that the executive and the legislators are buying, I'm sure that the prices have skyrocketed. So we are dealing with issues of economic realities, and not to be seen to be gagging those who are providing jobs, 30,000 jobs, good content, etc. Because it can happen to other players in the media industry. And what they should therefore avoid is being seen as, maybe there is an agenda to go after these people. So I think, and I know, of course, that FCCPC is headed by a reasonable gentleman, a very senior journalist, who happens to be a lawyer, by the way. I think that this issue will be looked at so that there are no undercurrents or political agenda. Kachi?
Exactly. No undercurrents of political agenda. Well, that's all on the week that was.